Hello, everybody. Here we are with Joanna Penn today. She's an award-nominated New York Times and USA Today best-selling thriller author, as well as writer of nonfiction for authors. And she has written, I think, more than 30 books and sold over 600,000 books in 149 countries and 6 languages, which is amazing. And her blog and podcast, the Creative Penn with a double N, are a lighthouse, as I define them, are a lighthouse in an ocean of doubts for us indie authors, because, it's pretty hard sometimes. So thanks to people like Joanna, we can find our own way. So Joanna, thank you for being here today.
Oh, I'm excited to talk to you, Eugene. And yeah, I'm just thrilled about Italy taking off and self-publishing and everything really accelerating now. It's great.
Yeah, that's right. Because we're talking about this right now. Like we both think that due to this pandemic, actually, yes, things are turning quite positively for us authors, so which is good. And it's kind of connecting straight with your book, Artificial Intelligence, Blockchain, and Virtual Worlds, which talks about these kind of changes. But basically, it's going even faster, right? So can we talk about what's going on in the self-publishing world?
Well, I think the point is it's not just the self-publishing world. Obviously, what the pandemic is terrible in so many ways, but equally, the silver lining for those of us who do business online is that so many more people have discovered buying online. And as we were saying, this is what's happened in mainland Europe, is that people who previously might have only bought a book in a physical bookstore are actually now buying ebooks on various devices. They're buying digital audio. They're listening to digital audio. They've discovered podcasts, and they're also buying print books online through various websites. So that's the reader. And then the businesses have obviously all gone online as well. The marketing has gone more online. So what we've seen is that the pandemic has accelerated the digital commerce that many of us, like I've been doing for over a decade, and many indie authors have, but it's been predominantly in the sort of US, UK, English speaking market, and now it's starting to take off. Now, in terms of some of the other accelerating changes, I mean, obviously you and I are doing this on Zoom. This is the other thing that's happened, is that people have discovered working remotely, again, stuff many of us have been doing for years, but it's made people feel more confident about going to online summits, about buying online courses, about going into a sort of online space and almost a virtual reality space, but not quite a headset, but,
Not
networking
yet, not
online.
yet.
Not yet. Yeah, not yet. But even my husband went to a conference which was using different software to sort of network and listen in to conversations. And
Oh,
we've just seen an acceleration of tools and technologies that are enabling the type of business that works for the independent creator. And I guess that is, that's kind of the most exciting thing. And I know a lot of independent authors I know have had one of the best years ever in terms of their sales, and moving into selling direct, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But
yeah.
essentially, yeah, that's what's happened. It's this acceleration, and those of us who were already positioned for online, we didn't have to adapt. We just took advantage of this explosion in readership.
Yeah. So talking about these new technologies, for example, the blockchain technology, how can it serve our purposes?
Well, I was thinking, I don't like to get too technical when we talk about the technology. So what I like
Hmm.
to say to people at the moment when authors, because generally authors are not the most technical of people. I'm not a programmer or any of that, but I love technology. So what I say to people about blockchain is
Because
think about
many
how.
people, they think, oh, well, what is it? What?
Yeah,
Blockchain. So they don't
exactly.
even
But the
know.
first the first thing I say to people is, well, look, do you know how the internet works? Do you know about, HTTP? Do you know how to do programming with Java? And most people are like, no, I don't even know. So I say about that, about blockchain, you have to think of it a bit like the internet 20 years ago, in that it was just the beginning of what became an architecture of a new business model. So I want people to think about blockchain as the underlying architecture that will drive new ways of doing business. So, for example, people get confused about currency, cryptocurrency, but the currency is just one thing that can happen on blockchain, on a blockchain, for example. So yeah, so that's the first thing. You don't need to understand the technology in order to use it, but in terms of the potential, it may transform the way we register and track intellectual property, which is something that will be really good because it will help us with plagiarism and piracy. It will enable us to sell in new formats like NFTs, which we might come back to in a minute,
Yes.
and have a second-hand market for digital. Now, this is radical. We've not been able to have a second-hand market, well, ever. I mean, second-hand book sales, physical books, the author doesn't get any money. That just doesn't happen. So what this
No.
could do with smart contracts is enable the creator to make money all the way through the second-hand retail market. So that's really exciting.
So it
It gives
keeps
us
track
new,
of the sales,
yeah,
and then
it
you
will.
get a percentage.
Yeah, exactly. You can say, right, I could sell you a book and get the 90%, but then every time you resell it, or someone else does, I get another 10%, for example. So that's amazing. It will add real new revenue sources. It will also enable these different formats, these sort of multimedia formats, which are interesting. It makes payments more transparent, faster, lower fees. We can sell direct in a different way. It's just going to cut out a lot of the middleman in the banking system that is going on right now. But it's definitely going to take a few years to change. So what I would say to people right now is it's going to be a couple of years, although this year at Frankfurt Book Fair in Germany,
Hmm.
Bookwire are going to launch the first sort of NFT architecture blockchain for publishing. So it may
Wow.
be that 2022 will be looking at doing some of these more interesting things. But I also just want to remind people up front that you don't need, like, if you're just writing your first book right now
Hmm.
and you're looking to upload it to the Kindle, you don't need to start taking action on some of these new technologies. You can just be aware that things are coming, but you don't have to like jump on everything right now.
Hmm.
I realize this is one of the big problems with self-publishing, is
Hmm.
there's so many things you could
Yeah,
do and so
we feel
much.
overwhelmed
Yeah, you feel
sometimes.
overwhelmed. And the important thing is that you write your book, finish your book, get it edited, work with your
Yes.
editor. Yeah. And then put it up on some platform, whatever you're advising. I know you're talking to lots of people. And then cultivating a relationship with readers through an email list. Again, I know you've talked about this. And really, if you have those basics in place, when the platform shifts, say to blockchain, so people are building blockchain applications on Amazon already,
Hmm.
but it hasn't shifted into the publishing yet, then we will just be able to do that. We'll be able to sell on a blockchain, or through Amazon, or through our website, or all these different places. So
Yeah.
that's what I want people to think, that the
Hmm.
important thing is still
We
creating the
have
book.
we have a professional product with professional
Mm.
package, etc., and we develop a kind of community around us,
Yes,
right?
and then whatever the technology comes, you'll be well positioned to take advantage of that. One other thing I would say to people is, if you're going to, many people listening might already have signed contracts with traditional publishers, for example. In Italy, that is obviously right now a much more common way
Yeah.
for authors to get their books out. What you've got to watch with the contract is that one of the clauses that's coming out in English is this: all formats existing now and to be created for the life of copyright. That, yeah,
Ah,
it's
that's
crazy.
smart. I see. So basically,
So
you are
that's,
chained.
yes, you're chained into a contract for 50 plus years after you die. And the
Yeah.
problem with this format's yet to be invented. is an NFT, for example, which is this digital special edition, let's call
Yeah.
it. Authors who've signed a contract like that will not be able to do that. Or even something like audio, they won't be able to do an audiobook, or they won't be able to sell direct, or all these
Mm.
different things. So one thing for people to keep your options open for the next 40, 50 years, however long you're going to be an author, then make sure you only sign contracts that are very specific. So, for example, Italian language, worldwide Italian language for
Mm.
ebooks, and paperback, original, or whatever.
Yeah.
Be very specific. Don't just have this open clause, because that's the best way you can keep your options open. And that's what we want to do, I think, as technologies change.
Yeah, yeah, it's very important to think about all of these things and be open-minded, you know. So you mentioned about also audiobooks. So now, you know, there is kind of explosion of the audio content, you know, and maybe it's just the beginning, basically. So for example, I'm thinking about Sweden,
Mm.
in which, you know, the audio market basically now it's even more than it's larger than the ebook market, which is incredible to me.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so we both record our own audiobooks by ourselves. And I would think it's very interesting because you also took a step further, right? I'm referring to the experiment you did with Mark Lefebvre. Can you talk about that? What is it?
Yeah, sure. Well, just before we get into that experiment, just what you're saying is correct. We are really at the beginning of what is possible in the audio market. I went to an audio conference last week, with an American organization, but what they're talking about now is this massive expansion of audiobooks and the crossover with podcasting. So audiobooks being released on podcast apps, podcasts turning into audiobooks, professional narrators working on podcast productions. And you're right, in a number of countries now, audiobook sales are greater than ebook sales, and audio sales are driving fiction sales, for example, in many of the Nordic countries. So that's really interesting. But again, with Italian, with other, and there, I heard the Spanish people talking about this, there is not enough content in other languages other than English right now. So
Mm,
if you're listening and you're obviously Italian or whatever language you're speaking that is not English, you are at a great point in history to actually get into this early, because there's just not enough content. So if you think about all the people who are looking for content in their own language, if you can get in early, then you're going to be in a much better position. So that would be one thing. Just normal podcasting, or
yeah,
doing video or doing audiobooks
because
is really good.
even for example, sorry, Kobo Writing Live now, they let us, you know, upload our audiobooks in Italian, but they're just for the other markets, for the for,
Oh,
yeah, for
really?
the English speaking market for now, but still it's already there. So that's what I did. For example, I uploaded my
Mm,
audiobooks in Italian, and when they will open it pretty soon, it's already there. So
you'll
I'll
be
be
there.
one of the first ones,
Exactly.
right? So it's something to think about.
Yes, and again, I did that in English, would have been 2014, and it took, a while before it really took off. But I think where we are now with the digital trends is it should take off a lot faster once it's opening up. So that's really brilliant that you're on there. What I would say to people as well is I do my non-fiction, but I don't do my fiction, because I think fiction is still, for actors. But in terms of what I did with Mark Lefebvre, so basically we have seen the technology of AI voice. So people will have maybe they'll have their GPS, right? Their GPS or their Siri or their Alexa, or
Yeah.
any of their devices. You can choose the voice for these devices. So you can say, I want a British female voice in my device, or I want an Italian male voice. And we're used to doing that. People are used to doing that. And what's interesting with AI voice for audiobooks and for podcasts is that the emotion in these AI generated voices are getting so much better. And if people are in the gaming community, this is being used in gaming already, and it's just getting better and better. So what Mark and I did was we built these voice doubles, and we had a conversation with our two AI voices, and
And
we'll
it was
probably do them.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, that's
it
interesting.
was
Yeah. So
very
we'll probably,
realistic, I'd say. Yeah,
yeah, and we're probably going to do it every 6 months or something to kind of show the
to show.
development
Oh,
of
cool.
the voices. But that's where I started with AI voice was, okay, I just want a voice double and I'll narrate my own stuff. But now I think there's this stratification of voice, the way we do various things. So there'll be a me human narrated version of my audiobook. There'll be an AI narrated version, which might be a lot cheaper. But then there'll be another version where someone can choose the voice, or someone can choose the maybe we'll be able to change the translation. So people will be able to choose the way the book is delivered, and that's how I think the future will go,
That's more
because that's,
flexible.
yeah, that's what we're used to doing with so many voice first things, that it has to go that way. And what I would say is there's definitely going to still be jobs for narrators. There'll probably be a lot more jobs, but it will be because there'll be this explosion of audio content. But a lot of it, especially in markets where there's not enough, it has to be done by AI. If you think about all the millions of books in Italian that are not available
Yeah,
in audio,
yeah,
how are they going to get to
exactly.
people unless they use
Exactly.
AI narration?
Yeah, because for example, I noticed even like Storytel now is it's expanding in Italy as well. So yeah, there is more and more interest into this world of audio, and
Mm.
more and more people, even staying at home, you sometimes you gotta cook, you gotta do, I don't know, yoga in front of the TV, watching YouTube, something like that. But still, you can listen to something, and it's good. And another thing that is cool about audiobooks is that, for example, as you do, you can listen to them even at more like a faster
Faster.
speed,
Yeah.
and it's incredible. So that way you can consume even more. It's amazing. It's really
Yeah,
amazing.
it's funny you say that, because I listen to audiobooks at sort of 1.3, 1.4 now,
I
and
tried, and
podcasts.
it's kind of hard.
we You have to take it up slowly, and podcasts too I listen to faster. But what's interesting, and I've shared this before on my podcast, but we know a blind guy, and he does everything at a speed that's so fast it just sounds like a little mouse or something, it's so
Wow.
fast. And so it just shows. And when I saw him doing processing words in his brain, it just shows you that you can adjust as a human to speed. And a lot of the audio purists get very unhappy with this. They think that you have to listen at the perfect speed that they have recorded it at. But look, we're in a very different world now. We're in a world where people do consume things faster. I mean, YouTube, I change YouTube to go at 1.5 speed. I don't want to listen to some real slow video. I want things to go quicker. So you can
Yeah.
adjust, even Netflix are looking to adjust the speed of their videos. So people want choice. And I think this is the key thing for self-publishing, just coming back to the basics. When in the English language self-publishing market, a lot of people start with an ebook because it's the cheapest really to produce, and then they'll do a print on demand, and then the audiobook will be the third format that people usually do because it's more expensive. But now what's happening is KDP print is moving into hardbacks. You can also do
Yeah.
large print. So I have 5 formats at the moment: the ebook, paperback, hardback, large print, audiobook. And that looks really professional, right? And it gives the reader choice. And that's what, I mean, most books are not available in all of those formats. So if we as independent authors can give people more choice, we're going to sell more books. And with print on demand, it's easy.
Yeah, because also we have to think that, for example, if I love audiobooks, I'm not going to buy your ebook. And if you only have
Exactly.
ebooks, I'm sorry,
Mm,
you're going to miss me.
mm.
And that's it. So
Yeah, and
we
that's
have to consider.
and also just for marketing. I mean, I know you do video and you also have a podcast feed, right? An
Yeah.
audio feed. Yeah, and I don't read blog posts anymore. I pretty much get all my information from podcasts that I listen to. I do look at feeds, like, I'll scan things, but I won't read podcasts. I'll read books, I'll listen to audiobooks, and I listen to podcasts. So in terms of book marketing, for people listening, and book when you think about book marketing, you also have to think about how people find content. If you have an audiobook, then you should be doing podcasts. You don't have to have your own podcast, but doing interviews on
Mm,
podcasts is a
mm,
great way to sell audiobooks, because those people are listeners
yeah.
first. Yeah, so you have to think about where are the people that you're trying to target, not just in terms of uh, the type of blog you might appear on or the type of YouTube channel, but also the way that people consume related to the product that you're trying to sell. So Amazon ads work really well for ebooks, for example, or
Yeah.
some print on demand, but don't work for audiobooks. Going on a
Mm,
podcast works well for audiobooks.
yeah. Yeah. So changing the topic, let's talk about what you're doing, what you're doing with Orna Ross and in general the Alliance of Independent Authors, because you're trying to kind of take action in order to change the copyright law.
Well, I
Kind
wouldn't say
of,
we're
yeah. I mean, yeah.
I wouldn't say we're trying to change it, because of course the law can only be changed by the legal people. But
Yeah,
what
but what
what
are you doing?
what's happening at the moment is essentially we have submitted some responses to the UK government, and I'm sure the EU is doing this. Certainly, the Worldwide Intellectual Property Organization is. They did this call for responses on the impact of artificial intelligence on copyright law, because in 2020, a Chinese court gave copyright to an AI writing tool. I keep using the word tool. I think it should be called a tool, but they gave copyright to this, and I think it was might have been owned by Tencent, one of the big Chinese companies.
Okay.
Uh, so basically, this brings up a few issues around copyright, which is, well, okay, are we going to ascribe it to AI? Because there's a lot of AI creation going on. The music industry is well ahead. A lot of co-creation with AI to make new music. So where does the copyright lie, and how's this going to work? But I think what's happened is I've changed my opinion on this a lot, because I think they will be so late that it won't matter. I think there are
Mm,
already a lot of works co-created with AI out there in the world.
yeah.
The problem with it's more about, well, how do we make sure that humans can still have a business? A lot of, it's, and perhaps it's less about that than the licensing of our works to train these types of models. So, for example, at the moment, the AI writing tools that are being used have been trained with works that are out of copyright and that are available freely on the internet, things like reddit.com or
Mm.
YouTube.
Oh, what was the Gutenberg project? I think
Yeah, like
something like
Gutenberg,
that.
so really old books.
Mhm.
And of course, one of the biggest issues is if you think about books that are out of copyright, so the author has been dead for 70 years, the people who were published back then were different to now. So you've got a lot of problems with bias in terms of, for example, women, people of color, people
Yeah.
representing different gender orientations, sexuality, all of these things that we now take for granted more in our modern world are not included in works out of copyright because it just wasn't allowed. So
Yeah.
I think what we're trying to do is to say, okay, AI is going to be used, but how could creators benefit? also, so we're sort of saying, well, what if we could license? What if I could say, you can have all of my novels and all my nonfiction, and you pay me a license fee, and that goes in to train your model, and that then goes on to create more stuff. So I think overarching this whole thing is the world is changing, and a lot of authors are like, no, it's not happening, just don't tell me about it. Whereas what I feel is this is too important to be left to people who are not creators. You know, a lot of the people who make the laws, who make the technology, are not authors, they're not the musicians. So we need to be involved in order to shape a future that works for us.
Yeah.
But I think I've also come to the feeling that the law only happens a lot later, and
Mm.
tech is moving so fast. I and other people are not going to wait for the law to be
Yeah.
in place. So we have to think about how we want this new world to work, and then figure it out for ourselves basically. And
Yeah.
then the
Yeah.
law
Yeah.
the law will happen, but it won't be for a while. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I think yeah, for example, even what we were saying, like blockchain technology somehow might help this kind of things. And but I really appreciate your efforts, because you're trying to do something big, talking about this kind of topics, difficult topics, but it's necessary, I think. This is also
Hmm.
why I wanted to have you here at this event, because I think that this is important. We have to think about this kind of thing.
Yeah, well, thank you. And obviously I'm not you've heard me talk about this. I don't I change my mind because things are changing all the time. And what I might have thought 6 months ago, I've changed my mind on. And as things emerge, I'm trying things. But this is the other tip for people, is that
Mm.
this is how I've done self-publishing. So in 2008, before the Kindle, before the international Kindle, this was the iPhone had just come out. And at that point, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I'm going to try this. Or doing podcasting in 2009, it was like, oh, I guess I'll try this. And essentially, this is the way to do this stuff. Is, yes, it's difficult and it's scary and you have to learn some things,
Yeah, this is a
but
learning curve.
yeah, you have to learn it. But if you give it a go, then some of it will work and some of it will help. And also, this is what I find fun. Like, I think if you don't like to learn, then you are not going to be a successful independent author. You have to want to learn new things, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You can learn from other people. So, of course, you're sharing and people on this summit are sharing, but you still have to get into a system and try it yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
if you don't want to do that, then find a publisher, basically.
Well, then it depends then on the contract what you're
Yes,
gonna
on the
find.
contract.
uh,
That's true. But I do think that the last decade the last decade has meant that I could leave my job. I left my job in 2011 in order to do this. The only reason I could be a full-time author entrepreneur is because of technology. And so when I look forward to the next decade, the 2020s up till 2030, say to 2031, in
mm,
2031 I will have been doing this for 20 years. So how can I make sure that I can keep going? How can I make sure I keep writing my books and keep making money? And for me, every couple of years things shift,
yeah, you have
things
to refresh
change.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to keep up to date with what's going on. And look, that's fun for me. It's obviously fun for you as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, it's really cool. You have to explore things and experience things by yourself, because even
Mm.
when you hear like big authors like you, for example, it's your experience which is different from mine. Your
Mm.
numbers are different from mine, and when you started, it was different. So these are all things that we have to keep in mind and try to be really open-minded, and
Yeah, and
try.
not just that. If you're publishing in Italian, the other thing for people to remember, obviously, there's the language, but there's also the genre. So certain types of books do better in certain markets. And that's important to remember as well. Although I would say that the biggest sellers in every market so far have been romance, science fiction and
Oops.
fantasy, and thrillers, obviously. Those are always popular and they are underserved by traditional publishing usually. So those are the markets that indie authors have done really well in, and hopefully that will continue even in these other markets. Certainly in Germany, those are also the genres that are starting to take off.
Yeah, talking about this, right, the German translation that you've done, because I
Mm.
tried to translate my books in English. Of course, it takes a lot of time if you want to do it professional and give it to a professional translator. You got to pay a lot of money. So I tried by myself, and I used like a Google Translator. Then I checked, and then I gave it, to one of my friends who is like a native speaker. But the result still with Google Translator wasn't that good.
Mm.
Instead, you tried, for example, Deep L for the German version of one of your nonfiction
Mm.
books. So can you talk about it? How was it?
Yeah, so deepl.com, you can go there and do it for free. So I would just suggest people give it a try for free. You can do a chapter for free and see how, if you speak two languages, you can see how it is. But DeepL, I would say, is the best. I know translators who use it as their first draft, but again, it's a first draft. So you need, it's a good first draft, especially for non-fiction. But I think you said you did a thriller. And
Yeah,
the problem with fiction is there's a lot more intent and there's a lot more artistry in the language than there is in
the
non-fiction. You can
nuance
still
might be.
write, yeah. So I would suggest you try one of your non-fiction on DeepL. It's only €8 for 5 books.
Yeah, and
So
it
it's like
takes nothing to translate them. Like a few
it takes like a
seconds, it's done.
second. Yeah, a couple of seconds and a couple
Yeah,
of euros. And but you then have to spend the money on the editing and also the
proofreading.
localization, it's called. So for example, for German, I worked with a German independent publisher and editor, and she localized my German. I've got 4 books now in German nonfiction,
Mm.
and she localized it. So the websites, the resources are different. So again, I haven't
Mm.
done into Italian for my book because it needs localizing. The translation is only one aspect. Yeah, sure, I could do that and throw it up, but it's the localization that makes the book useful to the
Yeah,
audience. So this is really important, I think. So, and again, it's a truth with AI in general, with AI tools. There's no just magic button that
I
you don't
wish.
just press a button and that's perfect. You can publish it. You still have, it's the same with our writing. You write a first draft and then you work with an editor and then you work with software like Pro Writing Aid. Then you work with formatting software, So AI tools like DeepL and Google Translate are amazing, but they're never going to be perfect, and you need to work with professionals to help you make it better. So yeah, I haven't done my books in any other languages yet. The other problem,
Mm.
let's be honest, is marketing.
Yeah,
So
that's what I wanted to ask you actually, because yeah, let's say, okay, my book is ready in German, perfect.
mm,
I know the German market will appreciate it, hopefully, and everything will be fine. But how can I market it actually? It's like,
yeah,
how did you do that?
exactly. Well, it's really hard. And in fact, I had a novel go in Italian about 5 years ago, and it went up on the store. And then I realized no one's going to know it's even there, right? So after a couple of years, I paid the translator and we withdrew the book because
Mm,
I didn't know how to market it. So what has changed in the last year or so is Amazon advertising has now moved into the French store. Is it in the Italian store
yeah, yeah,
as well?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the Spanish store, the Netherlands, I think,
Mm,
Germany. So
mm,
it's like 6 or 7 stores now that you can
yeah.
advertise in, the UK store, the US store. So basically, if you publish through kdp.amazon.com and you upload your book, there's a little button that's around marketing, and you go in there and you select. So I selected the German store, and then you can use Amazon auto advertising. And this is brilliant,
The automatic
right?
campaign.
Exactly. So you set up your budget. So let's say at the beginning, I was doing like 10 euros a day just to get it moving. And I also have I got a book for free? I use KU in Germany. I'm wide in other markets, but
Mm,
because I don't speak German, so essentially all I'm doing, so I using AI, using Amazon's algorithm to sell the books on its own, and I don't have to do anything. All I need to do is set the budget. So that would be another reason why I might go back into Italian now, or Spanish, is because you can just use Amazon advertising. But that's pretty much all you can do if you don't
mm,
speak the language, which is why, say, for French, I actually work with a publisher in France, because it's really hard to market. So I just leave that to him. So
mm,
this is where we have to think about it. The translation might get easier and easier, but you still have to sell the books to make a profit. And
yeah.
that can be difficult. So again, what I would suggest is that so someone like yourself to compete in English would be very hard anyway, because, well, no, your English is very good, but for a lot of, say, Italians who want to compete in English, the Americans and the Brits and the Australians and the Canadians, we're working real hard in our own language. So it's very hard to get noticed in the English speaking
Mm,
space. But if you're in a new market where things haven't taken off yet, this is a great time. So the people who did the best, who made a lot of money in the early days of self-publishing in English, had a lot of books. So probably what I would do if I was you and people early in the Italian market is I would focus on creating more books in Italian, so that you have a bigger presence, so that no, it's going to be very hard for other people to
yeah.
catch up to you. And I think that that will probably be my advice. Or to look at other potential European markets that
Mm,
the English, because Europeans, I know you're in Japan, right? But
yeah.
Europeans in Europe are a lot more comfortable with other European languages. People often speak of, a bit of Spanish, and, do things. So we're
Yeah.
a lot more comfortable. So a lot of American authors are not even trying to break into those markets yet.
Yeah.
Whereas an Italian author might do well in Spain and Germany.
I'm selling books in Italian and in Germany, and I don't advertise them, so just organic,
Yeah.
organic
Well,
sales, and
that's
then
because there's so few as well, right?
uh,
Yeah.
so. But also, I'm thinking maybe like with Facebook ads, what if we can have our audience, and it
Well, the
works,
problem,
and we
yeah,
create a lookalike audience changing the country. Could it
well,
work?
you can do that, but remember, Facebook, people like chatting on Facebook. And even though you might get your ad translated, then someone's going to put a comment underneath in German, and you're
Uh,
like, so now you have to go translate that comment into Italian or English or whatever, and then you have to type it out and a response. And so to me, it's more complicated as soon as you, and even like the first time I did all this in Italian, for example, I set up an email list. Stupid thing to do, because of course, how am
can
I
you
going to
keep it
do
up?
email? Yeah, exactly. So you have to think about how much time this is all taking, and translation
Mm,
takes so much more time than you think. So yeah, let's come back to, it's not a magic button. I would recommend creating more books in your primary language
mm.
and focusing on that before you look at moving into other things.
Okay, good. So, talking about new technologies, we mentioned earlier new NFTs. Exactly, what are they, and are they valuable for us authors?
Yeah, so NFTs, I don't know if people have seen them in the news. There's been some sort of hypey things about people making millions
Yeah,
from art.
recently it's like,
Yeah, it's really taken off. So it stands for non-fungible token, which is a terrible thing. I mean, it's just terrible words. But what I like to say is think about it as a digital original, or a digital limited edition. So everyone can picture in their mind a sort of leather bound hardback edition of a book that's been signed by the author. And that's a physical limited edition. But what we're talking about with an NFT is a digital limited edition. And this hasn't been possible before because obviously with an ebook, you know, it has, there's as many copies as you like, or that there's
Mm.
one, you upload one file and it sells as many times as we can. But digital originals will have something that makes them unique, and you can actually sell the whole thing alone. So you can just do one copy and only one person can buy it, and then that one person can sell it on. So why this is exciting, and the people who are doing this really well are artists, visual artists, and also musicians.
Mm.
But this is starting to move into publishing. As I said earlier, Frankfurt Book Fair, October 2021, I think will be when things start to take off for publishing and NFTs. But essentially, they enable this new revenue stream. And there's a market of people who want to own digital objects, which, you know, in a way we might think, oh, how does that work? But I run a business entirely online. My website doesn't
Mm.
exist in the physical world, and yet
Yeah.
my website is worth a lot of money, even though it's doesn't exist. But you can see it online.
Yeah.
You know, you can't.
You
You
remind
can't.
me of Yuval Harari, the
Yeah.
power of imagination, the
Yes.
corporations and stuff like that, but actually
Yes.
just in our minds.
It
Yeah.
that's very true. I mean, and I love Harari. He's fantastic. And yes, it is an idea in a way, but it also, a lot of the things people say, oh, why would that have any value? But as I just said, you know, a website with traffic or an email list, or, you know, these things, we know that data is valuable now. We understand that non-physical things can be valuable. So let's try and think about it that way. Of course, they're going to be valuable. So authors can do cool things like, you know, have special art in the book, or you could have, I'm thinking of doing like sort of handwritten things that go in the book, or you can sell it with a video, or you can sell it with tickets to live events. A lot of musicians are doing that. There are lots of ideas. Um, but it will enable this new revenue stream from another format. As we said earlier, it will enable the secondhand market. It will enable more direct to fan engagement, because the idea is that obviously only your super fans are going to buy
Mm.
these special limited editions.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that NFTs, or whatever we call them by this time next year, will be the next format. So what I will expect is, you know, I talked about the 5 formats that I do now. I think that I will also end up doing a short run of NFTs, and I may also do a short run of physical editions, or we might do a Kickstarter for an NFT. But even eBay has started with
Mm.
NFT resale, because eBay, you know, is a secondhand market for physical goods,
Yeah.
but they're starting to be a secondhand market for digital goods. So this is definitely going to be mainstream. Now, what I would say to people is, you're not going to make 500 million or 500,000 or even $500 from just sticking up an NFT, right? You have, as we said earlier, you have to build your audience,
Yeah.
and then some of them might want to. But again, let's think about it. If you're going to sell an ebook for maximum €9.99, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
€9.99. If you can even get €50 for an NFT, then how good is that? And then maybe you'll get some downstream money
Right.
elsewhere, and your fans are happy. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, I don't know whether I'll do it this year or next year, but I'll definitely do some NFTs, but I'm not going to be expecting to make hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, I mean, it's like merchandising, for example, I don't know, I was talking and interviewing the other day a fantasy author, and she does merchandising with the covers of her books, like
Mhm.
t-shirts or mugs.
Mm.
She said she doesn't sell a lot, but still, it's an asset that you have there. You
Yes,
said it,
although
it's there.
a lot of the physical merchandise is print on demand, so it's not an original, but you're right, it's another stream of income. But remember, these NFTs, say I do 6, then there only are 6, and that's what will make them valuable in the future.
Yeah.
So if I sell 6, I'm not a famous author at the moment, but if I sell 6 NFT originals of my next novel, and then in 30 years time I'm Stephen King, then that's going to be worth a lot of money, right? So that's another tip for people, is to think long term about this type of thing. And previously we have this mindset, an author has a mindset, which is I make a sale and that's it, because you never see money again out of that sale, because we've only had one sale, one payment. But
Mm.
what blockchain and NFTs mean is that it's not just one sale, one payment. That can, you can keep getting money from resale for like another 50 years or whatever. So
Yeah,
how
it's
cool
kind
is
of
that?
passive income, Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so now, thanks to AI tools such as GPT-3, or now we have artificial voices and stuff like that. So we will soon face, as we said, an explosion of contents. Uh, and so we cannot really compete with an AI, in terms of the speed that we can write a book. But you said, and you're totally right, that we should be more human. So now the question is, how can we be more human? Which is a
Yeah.
great tip, actually. It
Oh,
makes really
good. I'm glad you
sense.
like it. Well, you're you and I right now are demonstrating, which is our faces, our smile, our voices. And yes, there will be very soon fake avatars of people, and that will be fine. But what we need to do is to build an audience and be really honest. Like, I think honesty is really important. So this is me, this is my real voice, this is you, this is your real voice. And I'm going to be very honest when I use technologies that might enhance things. I'm always sharing what I do in public. What I would say to people is anything that, yeah, basically demonstrates your humanity. Now, if you don't like doing video, that's fine. Think about doing audio. And if you don't like your voice, well, tough. You have to show your humanity somehow. And then, so if it's not video, if it's not audio, then think about photos or images on, say, Instagram or Pinterest, where you're showing like some people do pictures of their dogs, right?
Mm.
Or they do pictures of their garden or their travels. Like, I share pictures of my travels. But by building up building out your human image. Okay, so if an AI is just going to create books, like if there's a button where it just creates books, that's not a rich world of that AI.
Mm.
And what you need to prove is that you are more than just your books. And I know this is hard. I'm an introvert as well. Many authors are. You might not want to do this, but I think it's going to be critical,
Mm.
because what will happen is people care about the creators that they want to support. And Kevin Kelly says 1,000 true fans. I'm
Yeah.
sure you can link to that in the notes, but you don't need millions of people to buy your book. What you need is this 1,000 true fans who buy everything you do, and some of them will support you on Patreon, and some of them will buy your NFT, and some of them might pay for a course you do. And you know that's how we have to think about making money. It's not about the big hits anymore, it's about this long tail. And sort of, yeah, so that's how I think about it, is really just
Mm.
continuing to share
Focus,
openly, honestly.
yeah, focus more on interactions and developing, a network, and yeah. Now I cannot find the words, but yeah, I had it
Yeah.
on top of my mind. But yeah, focusing on interactions with people.
Yeah, interactions or email. But I think the key is here that AI, we're not talking about general purpose AI, which is
Mm,
a Joe replica or a Eugene replica. That's not what's happening. What we're getting is lots and lots and lots and lots of narrow AI. So an AI that helps you, like Pro Writing Aid uses artificial intelligence to help me edit, or
mm,
Amazon ads can create advertising on
yeah,
Amazon for our books. So what we want to do is to use the narrow tools, and then for us to be bigger than those tools and say, okay, well, sure, I can use an AI filter on my Instagram, but I still took the picture and that's my face or that's
yeah.
my dog or whatever. So that's what I want people to think is like, yeah, we're going to use all these little narrow AI tools, but we want to be human and be across all of it and be like, I'm three-dimensional. I have a life.
Yeah. All right. So on your website at creativepen.com, you offer a variety of courses, and for example, there's one which is really interesting, and it's about developing multiple streams of income. So we already shared a few ideas on that, but maybe also was thinking, for example, about PayHip. So selling direct. What do you think about it? And it's going to
Yes.
be a trend, it's going to be a thing, or
Oh,
uh,
it already is a thing. So basically, they're calling it the creator economy. You'll see, this sort of news articles and all this on, and what it is that these big companies, there's a bit of a backlash against the big companies, against Amazon, against Google and
mm,
Facebook, and
mm,
all these companies. We use them, but we know that they're using us in return, right?
yeah,
And also, something like Amazon, for example, you can't sell books really anymore without paying for ads. So, on the one hand, they're amazing, but on the other hand, the money we make is getting less and less. So, selling direct gives us a few benefits. First of all, you can make 90%, so 90% revenue if you sell direct. The money goes straight into your bank account. Whereas if you sell on these other stores, it takes 60 days,
you gotta wait
basically. Yeah,
a
you
long
have to
time.
wait. I love selling direct. It's like you send an email and the money appears in your PayPal account or whatever, in your bank account. So that's financially, it's good. Also, you get the data from the person who buys from you. So you get their email address, which means you can then offer them other code like upsell codes and discount codes to buy from you again. And you don't have to pay advertising. So suddenly you're going
Yeah.
from, yes, you get 70% from Amazon, but you have to pay to advertise. So you're not getting 70% anymore. But if you're
Mm,
doing 90, you're getting 90% selling direct and you get their email address and that person learns to buy from you and they want to support you, you just make a lot more money and you don't have to pay for advertising. You just send an email and they buy your next book. So it's much more sustainable in terms of a business model, but again, it's just one of many. I have my books everywhere. You can buy them from me at payhip.com/ the creative pen. You can buy ebooks and audiobooks direct from me, and we're very lucky now to have bookfunnel.com who help us deliver ebooks and audiobooks to whatever device people have. And I have a tutorial on that. Maybe you could link to that in the show notes.
sure.
The creativepen.com/sell direct tutorial. And it kind of takes you through how to set it up. But what else? Yes, this creator economy is now being used by publishers as well. So a lot of publishers are starting to sell audiobooks direct and even big names. So Malcolm Gladwell, big
Ah,
nonfiction author, just did an audio first audiobook that he sold direct from the partner is Pushkin, but basically it was his first, there was a button on his website and you get it on your podcast app and you pay direct. So
mm,
I would say this is definitely a trend. This is more than, and again, it's taken off in the pandemic, and it's because of the available technologies, but also because people realize that they want the creator to make more money, and
mm.
without this type of thing it's going to be very, very hard.
And again, it reminds me that what they did in Radiohead, the band.
Yes.
They they started this thing a few years ago with I don't remember now the album,
It was
but
about 20 years ago. Radiohead's first Pay What You Like
uh
that they did, it was about 20 years ago. And yeah, they're also doing NFTs now. And but you're right, and the musicians are always
it's
ahead,
always ahead.
yeah,
It's always
of the
ahead.
writers. But this is definitely happening, and this and again, it works well with what we're talking about. You have to build an email list, and then you can move into doing these things over time. Just to be clear, people listening, don't try and sell direct if you don't have an audience,
Mm,
because there's no traffic there. You have to
no.
drive traffic to your store. So I would say it's an advanced tactic. A lot of the things we've talked about today are advanced topics, to be honest, but
Yeah,
it's good to know where you're going, right?
yeah, exactly. Um, One last thing. You also have a course about content marketing, which is uh, it's a bit easier, let's face it. It's easier if you write nonfiction, but
Mm.
for fiction writers, that's a bit that's a bit tough. So what are your suggestions?
Okay, so content marketing, if people don't know, is giving something away for free that attracts your target market in the hope that they might spend some money at some point. So for fiction authors, the biggest thing that you do is a free first book in series. So my novel Stone of Fire is free on all ebook platforms. So that is it's a form of content marketing. It's just a free book, and I advertise that free book. The other thing is obviously for your email lists, sign up. So at jfpenn.com/free, I have a free thriller that people can download for in exchange for their email address. And so that's another thing. But for most fiction authors, it's about free stories and free content. So some people put short stories on their websites, for example, do swaps and giveaways, that type of thing. And then often people will say, oh, well, I'm a fiction author, what do I blog about, or what
Yeah.
do I podcast about? And I struggled with this for a long time, and now I have two podcasts. The Creative Pen is for authors, and then Books and Travel is my podcast that I do under JF Penn, Joe Francis Penn, which is my fiction name. And I talk about the travels that underpin my books and interview other authors about their travels. And it is a slow build, but fiction is a long-term business. You
Mm,
need a lot of books to make money with
mm,
fiction. And I love podcasting, so it's very sustainable for me. But what I would say for most fiction authors, the best form of content marketing is just giving away some of your books. So Lindsay Baroka, who is a fantasy author, very successful indie author, I think she has something like 8 series, each with 8 books in. And the first book in almost
prolific.
every series is free. So basically, she's just always getting people in. And then because there's 7 other books, if you come in on book one, you're going to read the rest of them. So that would probably be my best tip.
And then when you finish, you're gonna start the next the next
Yes,
series, right?
hopefully.
uh, it's amazing, amazing. Okay, so thank you very much, Joanna. So where can we find you online?
Sure. So I have a YouTube channel, The Creative Penn, and also a podcast, The Creative Penn Podcast, and my website, thecreativepenn.com, pen with a double N. And I'm on Twitter at The Creative Penn. Those are all the places. And yes, I have my fiction as well and everything, but you can find everything at The Creative Penn. That's probably the best place.
Okay, thank you very much, Joanna. So we wish you all the best for your books and your projects. Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.